Little kids with no shame. You're actually born with no shame. You know that? You're born with no clothes and you don't care. You're born with no shame. Let me give you an example. That's my sister over there. When we were little, we were visiting a faith community, a church, and they asked, does anybody in the church, can anybody in the church, do they have a special song they want to sing? So typically, like if you've ever been in church, well, someone will go up and they'll be like, bless the Lamb, you know, something like that, right? And she says, I have a special song. And she walks right up and she says, this is my special song. This is my special song. This is my special song. She went for 2 minutes, same look and I. Everybody's like, what just happened? And then she goes, thank you. And we all clap. And we're like, because when you're young, there's no shame. And then somewhere along the line, you start picking up these cards. The first one's called, I'm a teenager now. That's the card you pick up and you're like, all of a sudden your friends are watching. Here's another story. I was a little guy as well. I was kind of learning how to play the trumpet. And because I had no shame, I actually went in front of a stage and I would go up there and I would do my thing. And then I picked up a teenager card. My parents were like, go do that again. And all of a sudden, I could not block out everybody out there. And I went up there and I couldn't make one single noise. I was like, whoo, whoo. And I was picking up a card. Here's another card you pick up. For some of us, you pick up a man card. This is what a man does. A man doesn't cry. Even if Leo, like he went under that wooden, you know they both could have fit on that board. Doesn't you pick up a man card. There are certain things that a man does, certain man does, and in public especially, there's certain things a man does, and then we keep on picking different cards. The parent cards is what a parent is like. And you graduate to the all-inclusive adult card. This is what an adult's like. This is what an adult behaves like. And these are the cards that we all pick up. So today we're going to look at one of these cards in the Bible. So if you turn your scriptures, we're going to be in 2 Samuel chapter 6. 2 Samuel chapter 6. We're going to look at one of these people that never left childhood. That for some reason has zero shame in this story. Okay, so that's 2 Samuel chapter 6. 2 Samuel chapter 6. This is our last message in our road trip series. It is the shortest road trip in the Bible. Okay, 2 Samuel chapter 6. Here we go. Let me give you a little bit of background so we're all kind of on the same page. In 2 Samuel 5, there's a guy called King David. In 2 Samuel 5, he becomes the king of all of Israel for the first time. Before this, he's only been the king of a small little town called Hebron, but now he's the king of all Israel, first time. So the thing that he does is he takes over a city called Jerusalem. This is the first time Jerusalem becomes anything. Before that, people are like, what? It's the first time it becomes something. And he takes over because it's right in the middle of all the kingdoms, of all the tribes. And he says, this is where my kingdom is going to be. The second thing he does is he acknowledges that he is not the true king of Israel. Israel's different than the other countries. Israel, their real king is God. That's what they say. And he's the first guy to say, make this official. He says, God is going to be the king of Israel, so I am going to bring the throne of God into Jerusalem. Now we're going to talk about a little box real quick. You may have heard Ark of the Covenant. Have you seen Raiders of the Lost Ark? No? You're all lying. All seen it. Did you know that it's surprisingly close, that Steven Spielberg actually looked up the Bible text to figure out the measurements? So if you see it, it's pretty close. So there you go. Now you have a movie to watch on your Facebook mode. No, okay. So the official name of that little box was called the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord Almighty, who is enthroned between the cherubim. Wow. It's actually designed to be like a throne that was going to be carried on shoulders like it was a king. People would carry him on shoulders, and in between, they say in between the cherubim, those are two angels. And that would be the the throne of God. It represented God's presence. So David is getting excited. He's going to make God the real king of the nation. So he goes around and he gathers 30,000 of his most good-looking soldiers. No, I think it says brave soldiers. 30,000 of them around the country. And the ark has actually been in a guy's house 9 miles from Jerusalem. His name is Abinadab. The entire nation goes out. He sends out the invite, and everybody comes out. They show up to Abinadab's house. His 2 sons, Abinadab, are in charge of the ark. They put the ark on a new cart, and it's led by some oxen. Ahio, not Ohio, Ahio is in the front of the cart. Behind the cart is the other son, Uzzah. And they begin walking towards Jerusalem. And a party breaks out. It's not just a party. They say that they actually worship before God. People are singing. It goes into great detail to describe all the instruments that are being used. Guitars, basses, whatever this is. Kind of weird keyboard thing. Yeah, that was there. All right? And so it's a huge party. David is celebrating. People are celebrating. People are getting really excited. This is the first time that the ark is actually going to be enthroned, where God is actually going to be enthroned at the center. See, the ark's actually been traveling for 400 years. It's been moving from house to house, and no one has ever said, this is where the ark, this is where God. No one's ever done that. This is the first time the ark is going to travel its last 9 miles, and the entire nation is watching. And then they get to a threshing floor. Any farmers in the crowd? No, Scott's gone, right? So the threshing. Why I thought you were a farmer? Do you guys have farmers? All right, doesn't matter. All right, threshing floor. This is where you process wheat. Okay, so there's a lot of grain and food on the ground. So the oxen are going by the threshing floor. It's Nacon's threshing floor. One of the oxen's like, delicious grain. Yes, please. And he yoinks the cart. The ark moves. Depending on what version you read, some versions say that the ark appeared to move. Some versions say that the oxen straight up stumbled. They're like, great, yes.
So it says he puts his hands on the ark, and then God strikes him dead. You're the praise band. Bow, 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 bow. Oh, right, the ark is coming home. Bow, bow. That guy just died? Oh, my. Oh, my. And it said a fear swept over the crowd. The parents are like, little child, no. It's just taking a nap. This thing is shut down. And it was a worship experience. It is shut down. Everyone's afraid except for one person. There's one person in the crowd who has a complete opposite reaction. It's David. David is actually, it says, mad. Wait. He's actually mad at God for what just happened. He's like, we just had good intentions about this. Doesn't God know? All right, this is where I get in trouble all the time. But doesn't God know that the only thing that matters is what's in my heart? I mean, we're doing the best we can. We even like dished out extra for a new cart. How is it possible that God did this? And he gets mad. And in the same breath, at the end of that verse, it tells us that all of a sudden David's anger turns into fear. Because he realizes, what if no one can live in God's presence? What if this is God telling us that he will never dwell among us? And he loses it. They look around, and there's a guy, Obed-Edom. They say, we're parking the ark in your house. The guy's like, do I have a say? No, there you go. Bye. Don't die. And they're off. Okay, so this is where we need to pause. Because this is a really disturbing story. It's few conversations that you have where you have such an ugly side of this. And you have to talk about it. We have to acknowledge it. Because some of you are thinking, I know I've been thinking that, what's the big deal? Why would God kill someone who's trying to help? Isn't Uzzah just trying to grab the ark so it doesn't fall? It's hard to know what Uzzah's thinking, but we can see what's going on. There was a guy who was alive, then he touched something, and now he's dead. And then the Bible doesn't mince words. It says that God did that. And that should bother us. I mean, if God is just, right? If God is just, if God is good, I get that maybe you're at the place where maybe God can't punish people, but you know what? Maybe God would punish people after, like, they've gone for a while, right? Maybe some serious sins. Maybe your third murder, you would get immediate death. But this guy just touches something, and his life is over. And this is much harder, by the way, if you happen to believe or you've heard that God is love. How could a God of love do something? Pause even more. Like, how could a God of love destroy someone he's created? How is that even possible? So, just right up the front, I'm not going to presume to know everything. I'm just going to share one brief little thing that's helped me. And this isn't the whole story, and it's not completely satisfying either, okay? Here's a way to look at what's going on. It's very specific to this story. God is holy. God is holy. That's described in the Bible. Here's another word for holiness. God is life. That's holiness. Extreme, unadulterated life. That's holiness. Here's one writer how he describes it. 1 John 1:5. It says, he's talking about God's holiness. He says, God is light. In him there is no darkness. And so when darkness interacts with light, comes into the presence of light, it's destroyed. By the nature of holiness, by the nature of God, it is destroyed. The relationship is broken. So here's the question. How does a holy God, if God really is who he says he is, if God really is holy, if God really is the life giver, how does a holy God dwell with broken people? And so the answer to the question is actually the Ark of the Covenant. That's the whole reason for its existence. It's at the center of the whole question. Here's the Ark of the Covenant represented God's presence with his people. It's a really unique thing because, not to simplify this too much, it's an empty chair that represents God's holy presence with his people. That's what it means. And then the top of the ark, it was a lid, and that's where the two cherubim, those golden angels, that's probably an easy way to look at it, that part was called the mercy seat. And so the ark is actually explaining, it's saying, the only reason immediate judgment isn't felt on all of Israel at all times is because of mercy. And once a year, through the ark, through this system, once a year, the high priest alone would come and sprinkle blood, okay, representing the sacrifice of Jesus later, representing mercy once a year on the lid of the ark so that God could have mercy, so that God could dwell with his people. This is like just a really, really, really like compact way to look at it. It's not the whole story, but the Ark of the Covenant was God's presence. It has the mercy seat, which represents that God forgives, that God gives mercy, and this is how God can dwell with his people. And what Uzzah does is he bypasses mercy. He bypasses relationship. Mercy was relationship, the sacrifice of Jesus, this relationship. He bypasses that and goes straight to holiness. And darkness cannot dwell in holiness. And this isn't new to Uzzah. We actually know that Uzzah was a Levite. Everyone else in Israel kind of knows what's going on, but Levites really know what's going on. No one could touch the ark except for the high priest. That's it. And Uzzah has had the Ark of the Covenant in his house for the last 20 years. That doesn't really answer all the questions, but it kind of starts the conversation. But this is what the Bible calls it. It says, this was an act of irreverence. It's not the music. It's not the shouting. It's not the oxen eating. It's what Uzzah does when he breaks relationship. That's what Uzzah does. So, everybody bails. 3 months later, David hears that the house of Obed-Edom, where the ark is stored, he's being blessed. David says, let's try again. And this time, they're reverent. This is how it breaks down. He actually goes ahead and he reads the instructions that God's given on how to handle the ark. The instructions for relationship, for mercy. And it's a particular Levite. You have to be a Kohathite. And you have to put it on your shoulder. So they go to Obed-Edom's house. And you can just imagine those 4 Levites. All right, we're up. All right, man. You done your will? It's 2000 BC. We don't have those. All right, cool. All right, you go first. All right. Not dead? Yes, not dead. Everyone's holding their breath. David's watching them. Yeah, you guys are doing good. Why don't you try walking a little bit? I'm like, oh, okay, all right. They take 6 steps. That's what it says, 6 steps. And David says, stop! Yes, you're still alive. Yes, the presence of God is back. He wants a relationship with his people, and he says, make a sacrifice. A fatted calf and a bull, they're killed. They're sacrificed. And immediately the party begins. It's the same musicians, twice as loud. And then it inserts this totally random verse. It says, and David danced before the Lord with all his might. And it describes how it says he was wearing a linen ephod, which if you're not up on your ephod lingo, a linen ephod is kind of like long underwear. It's got short sleeves. It's form-fitting, like everything Under Armour makes, right? Probably made by Under Armour, all right? It's form-fitting, and it's so that he can move, okay? And he does this dancing, so it's describing in the presence of all of Israel. By the way, not everybody's doing this. It's kind of just David, all right? Kind of just David. He does in the presence of all of Israel, and it starts making such a scene that his wife, when they get to Jerusalem, she comes out and looks at what's going on, and she's like, oh no. Oh no. Oh, babe, no. And this is what she says. By the way, she would have made like a really good Housewives of Jerusalem. Okay. She says, how the king of Israel has distinguished himself today, disrobing in the sight of the slave girls of his servants as any vulgar fellow would. If you're King James, if you're old school, it says, like any buffoon. That's what she says to him. Did you know that this is the Bible's first expression of sarcasm? She said, how you have distinguished yourself. She's straight up making fun of him. And here's David. Here's David's response. He's dancing, okay? I just want to pause it for a second. Before we move on, we got to talk about the dancing. What's up with the dancing? You see, many of us, I'm including myself in there, we think that we engage God right here. Right here. In fact, if you're really holy, you probably don't even sing. It's just like right here. You just think thoughts. You know truths. Well, yes, the ark did weigh 28.9 pounds. Okay? We do that. You actually will worship God intellectually, but it stops at the neck. I mean, if you're really good, you'll sing, but not like actually sing. You'll just sing as loud as the person beside you. as loud as the music is so no one will actually hear you. What David is doing is he's worshiping God with his whole body. He's doing something where he's turning off any inhibition. It's going out. What kind of dancing was it? It's actually described. It says the word implies, check this out, implies twirling. It's twirling, all right? And then it says he jumped. He started jumping before the Lord. I asked myself, how did this start? The first 6 steps happen. The music is going. Something started to come over David. It was like a little toe tap, like a little shimmy. Oh, I gotta twirl. He starts twirling. I gotta jump. Check this out. From Obed-Edom's house now, they're only 6 miles away from Jerusalem. If they're stopping every 6 steps, which some commentators think is happening, this party's stopping for 2,500 steps. 2,500 times they will pause. And I want you to know that from the first 6 steps, it says that David starts dancing. He's wearing his kingly robe. Somewhere along the way, he's like, I can't dance in this. He starts disrobing. That's what Michael says. He starts disrobing. Man, I'm getting hot. I need to move here. He starts disrobing. And then it says, and he does it with all his might. Do you know what dancing with all your might is? It's out of breath. It's muscles aching. I jumped that high. I'm going to jump higher. That's what he's doing. Unless you think this is a regular thing. We have some dancing that happens in a lot of worship scenarios. When they cross the Red Sea, they dance after. There's a bunch of times it happens, but never for a king. A king's never danced like this. So here's what happens. They get to Jerusalem, and Michal is watching. That's his wife. This is what we know about Michal. Michal actually fell in love with David when she heard that he was a great warrior. She actually ends up telling her dad, hey, I like this guy. He's like buff and tough. He kills. Girls were really big into that back then. All right? And she's like, I like this guy. And then in one look, David goes from being the cool guy to, oh, no. No, baby, no. No. She calls him vulgar fellow, buffoon. In one instant, she goes from love to disgust. There's no in between, by the way. You either love somebody or you hate love or disgust. Whatever you've done is gone completely. You've made yourself completely undone. She starts throwing everything. You did this in front of the slave girls. No, you did this in front of the whole nation. The entire nation just saw you act like a fool. I can't even respect you as a man or as a husband because you checked all those cards out after the first 6 steps. How will David ever recover? Why did David do this? Why did David dance? Okay, so before you start hating on Michal, check yourself. Before you start hating on Michal, I want you to know that Michal's not a monster. You know what Michal is? She's normal. Michal's a normal person. She's an adult. She's a normal person adult. She knows that there are certain rules on how royalty should act, on how adults should act, and she sees all of this being thrown out the window. An adult doesn't actively look for embarrassing situations. This summer, I was helping out with juniors at camp meeting. Camp meetings is where all these churches come together, and I was thrown to juniors. These are 9 to 12-year-olds. I should have paid attention. Something like that. It's like fresh meat. They see it like, ah! It was amazing. And here's what happens. We have this one song that we sing. It's called We Are Soldiers in the Army. We are soldiers in the army. There's a part of the song with the kid when you say a descriptor and the kids stand up, stand up and fight anyhow, and they got to go really loud. And we really encourage them to go nuts and insane, and then we release them to their parents. But this is what really stuck out. We would say, and all those who are 10 were soldiers, who are 10 years old. And those kids would go up, stand up, fight out as loud as they could. One kid would take his shirt off consistently. I'm not sure why. I don't know. You know, sometimes you win some, you lose some. The shirt off kid, whatever. Stand up and fight out. You're just like, for me, it would fill me with joy. I'm like, if these kids are this excited, stay this excited, that kid learns to put a shirt on. If these kids, it's going to be amazing. Then you say, and then the 11-year-olds, they were soldiers, half the volume. That's 1 year. And then the 12-year-olds were soldiers? I'm not sure if I want to be a soldier. I'll stand up and mumble anyhow. Here's the thing, like somewhere already there, it's happening. My kid, you play any kind of a beat, wiggy, wiggy, Doesn't matter where he is. He could be at church. He doesn't care. There's no shame there. You know what Michael also does? Is she sits back and she watches those who worship and she critiques those who worship. I do this all the time. Did that person really just raise their hands? I bet you they're faking. Did they really pick that song? I can't believe they picked that. That's Michael. Sit back. You never actually go in and worship. You actually never let it go. You're just like a little judgy behind because that's normal. That's how adults work. But I know that you've seen this. You've actually seen this scenario with David. Every once in a while, it happens. Every once in a while, you'll be at a concert and you will scream louder than you ever did in your life. You will come home unable to talk, and everyone at the concert was like that. Every once in a while, by a miracle, there's a basketball team in your country that does well, and everyone will lose their minds, and strangers will hug and kiss each other on the street, yell, jumping up and down. We know that this is possible. That's what happened, and David's the only one that does it, and his own wife doesn't understand what he's doing. So what has moved David to dance? Here it is. He says it. At the end of the conversation, he says, "It was before the Lord who chose me." He's saying, I'm dancing because God chose me. He's remembering a moment in his life when he was 15 years old, when a prophet came to his house, Samuel, dropped some oil on his head. That's not weird. People did that all the time. Dropped some oil and he said, and God has chosen you to be the next king. He anointed him. And so David is actually just remembering what God has done. And then he says, and God has been with me. He's not only remembering that first time anointing, he's remembering every single time that God has been with him. Because David has this habit that after something happens and he sees God, he writes it down, he writes a song about it. And sometimes it's good, like you delivered me, and sometimes it's like David messed up and he writes it, he says, have mercy on me, O God. But he remembers, and it tells us that the best worshiper in the nation is simply the person who remembers best. Jesus has a conversation where he says, who's going to love him best? The one who was forgiven most. So the one who remembers where God has been in their life will worship the best. Because any kind of worship scenario, God is the first mover. The reason we're here is because God moves somewhere in your life. You may not even realize it was God. Is there anything in your life that God has done for you? Can you speak and say, I've got peace in my heart? That's God. I've got community. That's God. This is a big one. The most broke person here has more money than the majority of the world. our blessings just blow my mind. What has God done for you? This is cool. You don't have to be a believer, by the way, to do this. When you walk life with gratitude, it changes everything. You can have a car accident. Instead of, my car is beat up, I'm broken, my insurance, what can I be grateful for here? I'm alive, no one got injured. Every single scenario can be taken with gratitude. It's actually a legitimate way out of a slump if you just start being grateful. Pick something to be grateful for. So in this whole nation, David is the one who remembers best. God's love for David sparks David's worship. And so David, this is the best part, David goes overboard with his worship. And that's good. I know some of us, I'm putting myself in here, by the way. You know what my idea of a good time is? Like a book alone in a dungeon. Yeah. I think something's broken inside. And I know some of you kind of had different kind of personalities too. And but what I know is that some of us have let what others think and the shame that comes from standing out, the shame that comes from being your true self, keep you from ever showing your true self. I know that some of us walk around genuinely with fear. If people only knew the kind of person I was. And we're somebody else entirely. And even in a faith community, I'm just gonna look like everyone else. I am not gonna stand out. But do you ever get tired of constantly watching who's watching you? Do you ever get tired of walking in shame? Do you ever get tired of walking in fear, of having to restrain someone? Do you ever get tired of having to hold on to that adult card? I'm an adult, I'm an adult, I'm an adult. And yet David here discovers something, that in worship, God invites you to put it down. Just lay it down. In worship, God says, hey, I'm your daddy. You can dance in my presence. You can do whatever you want. Check your inhibitions. Let every emotion go. Maybe it's going to be crying this time. Maybe it's going to be yelling, singing. Check it at the door. I'm your daddy. You are safe in my presence. And this is what David does. He goes completely overboard. He's in love with God. Another way to look at this is what David is doing, this one's gross, is a public display of affection. That's what he's doing in God's presence. When we worship, it's our public display of affection. And this is what David does in front of God, public display of affection, because love is not measured. Just a quick tip, if you're dating someone or married to someone, don't ever say, we already had a date this month. Let's wait till next month, till we have the money to date again. Why'd you only get me one flower? I couldn't afford the other 11 flowers. That is not how love works. You don't measure love. Love has no balance. Love is extravagant. Love is about going broke every single day. At the end of this, by the way, David arrives and he says, it's not enough that I danced. And he says, every single man, woman, and child, the Bible mentions, not families, every single person, from my house, I'm going to give you a loaf of bread. I'm going to give you a hunk of meat from the 2,500 animals we just killed. And it says a good-sized portion. We're not talking like a McChicken, man. We're talking like a Big Mac, the double one. Come on now. It's probably the same amount of meat. It doesn't matter. He gives them a good-sized portion and a cake of figs. And every single person gets them. And he blesses them because love is extravagant. It has no measures. And the word that's thrown around throughout his whole dancing over and over again is David celebrates before the Lord. Celebrates. Here's the last thing I'll say about David's celebration. There's this air of playfulness that you have in David's story. David actually enjoys being in God's presence. Something about what's happening here is overwhelming David so much, he can't keep it in. And wait for it, he plays with God. The next chapter is actually going to be God's response to what David did. And God's response to what David did is, you are a man after my own heart. In a whole nation, you are the only one willing to show your affection. You are the only one to have a play date with me. You are the only one to go to the extreme in your love for me. I will watch out for you. You are a man after my own heart. So, I actually know what you're thinking. Some of you are thinking. You're thinking, that was really good, and I'll call the praise team back up. But I'm not doing any of that. I'm not gonna dance. I'm not stripping my clothes, going down to my skivvies. I'm not doing any of that. I'm not gonna give away my food. Like I get that. But start with something. Maybe for you, it's to remember the last time that God did something for you. Every day to just remember, because the person who remembers best worships best. Just remember what God has done for you. When was the last time you actively sat down to think of God's activity in your life? Okay, that's something you can do. The other one is, this is difficult for some, by the way. Start by singing one song. Yeah. That's actually life-changing. You can even start singing this song at your house, by yourself. Crank the music and say, God, this is my worship, and sing the song. No one will hear you. God will hear you. Or come to church and say, I'm picking one song, and I'm going to sing it. And I don't care how it sounds, I'm going to sing just one song. I know a guy who has, what's the nice way of saying this? A horrible voice. But he's in love with Jesus. And you will go to a worship event, a worship environment. You know how some of us like have levels? He's got one level when he worships. It's, awesome God! Just like that. Like that. I'm like, I'm trying to get my inner Michael. Pick one song. One song. That's something you can do. Other one is maybe your interactions with God have all been here. Have all been intellectual. If I know the right thing, it'll be good. How about let loose a little bit and have a play date with God? This is a way to do it. You write a question that you have from God, and then you go do something fun. You go do something fun. Invite God to answer that question for you. Some people actually write the question, and then they'll write Bible verses that kind of speak to the question, and then you go do something fun. And it's incredible that God will actually speak through recreation and through something fun. That's called a play date. Another one is this one's good. We're just going back to childhood here. Can you today draw a picture for God? Can you do that? Because somewhere along the line, someone told you weren't good at drawing and you've never drawn since. Play a little. I'm going to draw a boat. It's a triangle and an upside down triangle. Play a little bit with God. This is what you do that could change everything. So at the end, David ends the story by saying one thing. He says, Michael, what you saw there, me dancing with the slaves, me taking my clothes off, dancing in my undies, Michael, that was nothing. That was nothing. You have no idea how much of a fool I'm willing to make myself for God. Because this other word for worship is actually worth-ship. It's giving worth. How much is God worth to you? How much is God worth to me? David's going to say, God is worth more than you can imagine. This is what old-timey people used to say. If God does nothing else, He done more than enough. If he does nothing else for me, He's done more than enough. And He says, I will be even more undignified than this. I will be even more undignified. You think I checked all my inhibitions? I held on to one or two. Even more are going to be checked out because I will be even more undignified than this. So this is the invitation. I invite you to grab your adult card every once in a while. Put it down. Grab your man card, your woman card, just put it down. And in the presence of God, dance in front of your daddy.
Thank you, Moses. Let's stand and sing this song and praise His name. I want to scream. And I want to scream it out from every mountaintop. Your goodness knows no bounds. Your goodness never stops. Your mercy follows me. Your kindness fills my life. Your love amazes me. And I sing because You are good, and I dance because You are good, and I shout because You are good to me. I want to scream, and I want to scream it out from every mountaintop. Your goodness knows no bounds. Your goodness never stops. Your mercy follows me, and your kindness fills my life. Your love amazes me. And I sing because You are good, and I dance because You are good, and I shout because You are good to me. Nothing and no one comes anywhere close to You. And the earth and oceans only reflect this truth. And in my darkest night, You shine as bright as day. Your love amazes me. And I sing because You are good, and I dance because You are good, and I shout because You are good to me. And I sing because You are good, and I dance because You are good, and I shout because You are good to me. With a cry of praise, my heart will proclaim that You are good. You are good. In the sun or rain, my life celebrates you are good, you are good. And with a cry of praise, my heart will proclaim that you are good, you are good. And in the summer rain, oh, my life celebrates that you are good, you are good. I want to scream, I want to scream it out from every mountaintop, 'cause your goodness, oh, and your goodness never stops. Your mercy follows me, and your kindness fills my life. Your love amazes me. Come on, sing, and I sing because you are good, and I dance because you are good, and I dance because you are good, and I'll shout because you are good. You're so good to me. Oh, you're so good to me. Amen. I want to thank you for worshiping with us today. The fun isn't over yet. We have lunch waiting next door for you guys. I hope to see all of you guys at the block party on Monday. And we're going to continue worshiping here a bit so you can stick around and have some more fun as we worship and praise God. Amen, and have a blessed Sabbath. We're here. You're the reason we're singing. Open up the heavens. We want to see you. Open up the floodgates. A mighty river flowing from your heart, filling every part of our praise. Your glory on our face, looking to the sky, descending like a cloud. You're standing with us now, Lord, unveil our eyes. You're the reason we're here. You're the reason we're singing. Open up the heavens. We want to see you. Open up the floodgates. A mighty river flowing from your heart, filling every part of our praise. Come on and open up the heavens. We want to see you. Open up the floodgates. A mighty river flowing from your heart, filling every part of our praise. Come on and show us your glory, and show us your power, and show us your glory, Lord. Come on and show us your glory, and show us your power, and show us your glory, Lord. Show us. And show us your glory, and show us your power, and And who am I that you are mindful of me? That you hear me when I call. And is it true that you are thinking of me and how you love me? It's amazing. Who am I? And who am I that you are mindful of me? That you hear me when I call. And is it true that you are thinking of me and how you love me? It's amazing. I am a friend of God. Oh, I am a friend of God. I am a friend of God. He calls me friend. And I am a friend of God. Oh, I am a friend of God. I am a friend of God. He calls me friend. Who am I? Who am I that you are mindful of me? That you hear me when I call. Is it true that you are thinking of me? How you love me? It's amazing, so amazing. And I am a friend of God. Oh, I am a friend of God. I am a friend of God. He calls me friend. 'Cause I am a friend of God. Oh, I am a friend of God. 'Cause I am a friend of God. He calls me friend. God Almighty. God Almighty and Lord of glory, and you have called me friend. And God Almighty and Lord of glory, you have called me friend. God Almighty and God Almighty, Lord of glory, you have called me friend. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. God Almighty and Lord of glory, and you have called me friend. shame is taken away, and my pain is healed in His name. I believe, I believe, and I'll raise a banner. My Lord has conquered the grave, my Redeemer, and my Redeemer lives, and my Redeemer lives, and my Redeemer lives. And I know He rescued my soul, and His blood has covered my sin. I believe, and my shame is taken away. Oh, and my pain is healed in His name. I believe, and I'll raise a banner, 'cause my Lord has conquered the grave, and my Redeemer lives, and my Redeemer lives, and my Redeemer lives, and my Redeemer lives. And you lift my burdens, and I'll rise with you. I'm dancing on this mountain top to see your